So we're back, and I'm going to introduce you with our next panelist. And I like to talk about Courtney, about how she basically saved my homeschool because I was freaking out. This has happened more than once. Probably the next presenter has saved my homeschool um, as well. But I was freaking out, and I just was thinking I was doing everything wrong. And she calmed me down and talked to me about the different things that homeschoolers do, much like what we're doing today. But then she made me laugh. She was like, my job is to be set the bar so low that everybody knows they can do this, even though her children are doing really well. I love this lady, and I call her my sister from another mister. So this, oh, what did I do? This is Courtney. Oh, I was supposed to show this first. This is Courtney. She is the mom of 7. She has been homeschooling for more than 20 years, y'all. So she has some experience under her belt. She says, I'm proficient in feigning sanity, which is one of the things you will see. She's very, very fun. She loves Jesus, new curriculum, and a good spreadsheet is what she has here. She is on a mission to give other moms the encouragement they need to realize that they can homeschool their kids if that's what they choose to do. So much like what our own Shane Scott was talking about, Miss Courtney Endicott is going to help us know how we can homeschool. Now, her topic today, even though she could talk about a plethora of things, her topic today is really about um, um, choosing a curriculum or choosing like how you're going to teach. Is that right? Just the different styles of curriculum and things like that. And I want to say that she has vocabulary that I sometimes have to ask about. So if she says something like, neoclassical something something, feel free to put it in the chat. Say pause, please translate, define that, because she's really, really versed in so much of this. So before I loose you and let you go, Courtney, I wanted to ask you to let us know why years ago you started to homeschool. And if your why has changed, which it often does, let us know what it is now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well. I
Okay.
can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, I was actually gonna explain that anyway. So I started when my oldest is 26 now. He went to a little private Christian school for preschool and most of kindergarten. But his behavior, well, in and out of school was becoming increasingly difficult. And I was trying like all kinds of diet things and supplements and things to like try to calm him down. And it became obvious to me that he was kind of hijacking the classroom. He would like go into the teacher's desk and they couldn't get him out, and so he was like wasting everybody's time. And I thought, well, if I was another parent paying this money for this private school and I found out that a lot of this time and attention was being devoted to this one kid who was like off the rails, I would probably be a little upset about it. So I decided to pull him out towards the end of kindergarten, and I just used their curriculum that I had already paid for with the school to try to see if I was even capable of homeschooling this child at all. And we finished out the kindergarten year. And then I thought I could go ahead and at least try first grade. And so we did. And kind of after that, the lifestyle just stuck. I had already another child by that point who was probably like 2 when my oldest was in first grade. And I had another one shortly after. So it just stuck. And I mean, in the end, I would never have been able to pay for private school for that many kids anyway. I mean, we would be homeless. So that's just, it just kind of stuck. I fell in love with the lifestyle and the flexibility of it. And that oldest child, I mean, he never would have been able to function in a what I call an institutional school environment. So public or private, either way, the way they're run, is a similar way. That just would not have worked for him. So, and I have another one that it really would not have worked for either. And some of mine probably would have been okay, but I liked having them home, and I like having a little bit more time to actually get to know my kids and have a little more of a relationship. I would be very, very busy and stressed if they were in school all day. When people ask me about that part of it, though, which people ask a lot, right? I am very busy and stressed anyway. Anybody who knows me will say that. But I think I prefer this kind of busy and stressed. So you're busy and stressed either way, in my opinion. So
True. Oh, that's a
anyway,
good point. That's a good point. All right. Well, I'm going to loose you and let you go, girl. And you just call my name out when you need me back. Okay.
all right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So hello, all of you amazing homeschooling or potential homeschooling mamas that are taking your time out to try to learn about this today. Bravo. And I hear that there are some dads on the call too. So extra bravo to you. What I'm going to tell you about today is I'm going to talk about some main homeschooling styles or methods, just to kind of help you start getting an idea of, like, some of them might click for you and feel like, oh, I feel like that one's speaking to me a little bit, right? That one's resonating with me, and like, maybe not that one. It'll give you a little bit more of a direction to go in. One of the issues that homeschooling moms today have, which is very opposite to the issue that they used to have when the movement was just starting to really gain steam back in the 70s, 80s, is that we actually have an overwhelm of curriculum options. I mean, there are just curriculum options coming out of people's ears these days. So you can, Google homeschooling math curriculum, homeschooling writing curriculum, you'll get 40,000 options. So one of the easy ways to kind of narrow that search down a little bit is if you can kind of find a style that you feel like is clicking with you, jiving with you, and then that can help. So I'm going to talk to you about some main homeschooling styles or methods that are options. And then I'm going to give you just a little few tidbits on the different sort of categories of subjects and how, they can be taught a little bit differently. And then I'm going to help hopefully take some roadblocks out of your way. I'm going to name a few roadblocks that you might be thinking that you have and help you move those out of the way. And then I'm going to give you a little piece of homework, nothing too stressful, just a little actionable step that you can do to help get things moving. And then if I have time, I'm going to give you a little bonus about my favorite piece of homeschooling that I just discovered about 5 or 6 years ago, and I love it. All right, so that's just a little overview of what we're going to talk about. All right, let me start with the styles. Okay, so there's 5 main homeschooling styles, and there's a few more that I threw in there for you as bonuses. All right, so your 5 main ones are going to be traditional, Charlotte Mason, classical, unit study, or unschooling. And you might have heard of some of these, and some of them you're going to recognize even if you didn't hear like the title of it before. So we're going to start with traditional. So traditional is the one that we're going to be most familiar with, right? Most of us grew up with a traditional curriculum or traditional type of education. It's going to be textbooks, workbooks. It's what's usually used in an institutional setting. They are developed for institutional efficiency. They're developed to be able to keep, 20 kids of relatively the same age on relatively the same track, to try to keep them going at the same speed. And so while most of us learn this way, we think we turned out okay, it does have its drawbacks. It leaves very little room for an unaverage child. Okay, so traditional schooling, traditional curriculum works great for the average child most of the time. If you're not too fast or too slow in any given area, usually it'll work fine for you. So it provides some information. It's usually some uninteresting information, though they're not known for being super interesting. And then it asks the students to retain that information and spit out the parts that the curriculum developers deemed the most important. Okay, so the people who developed it decided these are the important facts we want to make sure you get out of this this thing that you just read or that was read to you. And so they'll give you, worksheets, tests, quizzes, homework questions that are designed to get you to spit back out the information that they think you should have retained. It's also this type of education is also fairly time consuming for both the student and the teacher. So in a homeschooling environment, it usually requires every child to have a separate book for each subject and each age, which is every child. So, if you've got 3 kids, you're going to have 3 different math books, 3 different history or social studies books, 3 different science books, 3 different English books, whatever, language arts thing that you're doing. So that's a lot for a mom to run back and forth and keep track of. And I did it for quite a while, but I wouldn't say I did it exceptionally well. All right. So what else about the traditional? But it is what most of us know. And sometimes that is just the easiest place to start. Okay. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of us who've been homeschooling for a while would probably agree it's not like the best approach long-term, but sometimes if you just need to get started, and that's what that seems the simplest, that you don't have to like learn a new language to really understand how to implement it. They're just going to send you a bunch of textbooks and workbooks in a box, and they're clearly labeled grade 3 or whatever, and you can put these in front of your kids. And a lot of times the directions are very clear. You don't even really have to get into the teacher's guide. And that's what's going to help you get started quickly and with as little stress as possible, then go for it. Like I said, that's what I did when I started. There was no internet, guys. There was no internet. Okay. And I knew like 2 or 3 other homeschooling families. We only knew of 2 curriculums. I mean, and again, there was no internet. We couldn't even look up those curriculums on the internet because there wasn't one. You literally had to have a phone number and call them and like ask for a catalog or something. So I picked one of those, and we did that for a long time. And even when I started learning, there's other ways, and there's, maybe better ways that I would like more, ways that would maybe work better for this kid. It was going to take me a lot of time and energy to look into those. And the internet was still kind of new. And I had like a whole bunch of kids and babies nursing and whatever, and I was exhausted. So even when I started figuring that out, it took me several years before I could really start transitioning over to some of that. So if you need to be in traditional right now, you go ahead and do it. Okay. That's your business. Okay. All right. The next one I'm going to talk about is the Charlotte Mason method. This one's really popular with homeschoolers, from what I can tell anyway. All right. So this is pretty opposite of traditional. Charlotte Mason was a one-room schoolhouse teacher in England in the late 1800s, early 1900s. She developed some strong philosophies on how children should be treated and educated. And she put those philosophies into practice as a teacher, and she wrote a large 6-volume set on her ideas. So there's a lot you could read about Charlotte Mason and her philosophies. But here's the gist for you, okay? Children are born persons and should be treated with respect. All right, I can get on board with that. Go, Charlotte. That's some good advice. Teachers should use living books and not dry textbooks to educate their children. What's a living book? I'm glad you asked. A living book is defined by Mason as a book that is written on one topic by an expert on that topic, somebody who's passionate in that topic, okay? As opposed to a textbook, which is usually written on multiple topics by a committee, and it was designed, which the committee may or may not be an expert or passionate in that topic at all. Okay, like I said before, they were designed for more of an institutional setting to keep a whole bunch of kids kind of on the same page. And they're really designed to go over a broad range of topics for like a whole school year, right? They don't want to have to use 8 different books in social studies for the year. Okay, so that's a living book, okay? She promoted the consistent inclusion of subjects that traditional methods would consider extras or electives, like nature study, handicrafts, art appreciation. So in Charlotte Mason's philosophy, you would put these types of subjects in all the time, like at least once a week. And one of her biggest emphases was on children spending plenty of time outdoors and exploring and playing. That was big for her. All right. Her method also used oral and written narration very frequently as an absorption and evaluation tool. Okay, so rather than a workbook or a test or whatever, what she would do, what she encourages people following her method to do, is you're reading to the child or whatever you're doing, you're absorbing the information, and then you ask the child to narrate it back to you. So what's narration, you ask? That is when the child tells you back what they absorbed and retained from what you just read or said or played a video or whatever you did. So when they're younger, it's just going to be oral narration. They're just going to tell it back to you. And as they get older, you're going to have them start writing it down. And so they're narrating it back to you. So as opposed to a textbook designed curriculum with tests and quizzes that are telling you what the pertinent information was that they think you should remember, with narration, it just depends on what you do remember. What do you remember? And it works well if you have, several children all in the room at the same time that you're teaching, because this one remembers these certain things. And then you ask someone else, hey, do you have something else you can narrate about? Do you have something else you can elaborate on that you remember? And they'll tell a little bit more. And everybody's kind of hearing it again. That's really helpful. Okay, so I do have notes on these styles. I'm just making sure. I was like, Mason also believed in the importance of copywork and dictation. That's big in Charlotte Mason's methods. Okay. So the Charlotte Mason method can be used easily with children in several grades at once, which is another plus for the content subjects. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Each child only needs a more customized like math and like reading phonics instruction plan, which are more the skill subjects. So you're going to see that as a theme in a lot of these. So the textbook traditional plan, of course, has a separate book for each child for each subject. But for these other ones where you can kind of group children together for some subjects, a lot of times the skill subjects, which again, I'm going to explain, like math, usually math is the big one, they're still going to need their own separate like incremental instruction in that. So they'd probably have a math book unless you want to wing math. I mean, you can wing math if you want. All right. That's the gist of Charlotte Mason. Let me recap it for you a little bit. Children are born persons. They need to be treated with respect. You want to use living books and not textbooks. Or another category of books she has is twaddle. She calls it twaddle. It feels a little self-explanatory, but basically it would be something like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Little Disney Princess picture books. Like they don't really, enhance the mind or the virtue or the character of the child at all. They're just kind of entertaining and spending time. And she was big on not having them read twaddle. But I do know a lot of Charlotte Mason method homeschoolers that let their kids read stuff like that sometimes. So anyway, living books, and then her special sort of subjects that she wants you to do regularly, more than you would ever find in a traditional setting: nature study, handicrafts, music and art appreciation, oral and written narration, copywork and dictation. So those are like some major highlights of Charlotte Mason's methods. All right, so the next one's going to be classical education. All right, this one can be a bit of a rabbit hole. If you look up classical education, it's going to go in a lot of different directions. People are going to be arguing with each other. Okay, and the reason for that is it is not necessarily like what they're talking about when they talk about classical education now is not necessarily like exactly what people were actually doing in like the classical ancient Greek education back then. Okay, so that you can look up, like what is the history of what the education was at this time period. That's different than when they call it classical education. Okay, so and I did mention neoclassical once to Nicole, but then I was trying to like dig it out, and I couldn't find the exact precise definition. So I'm not mentioning that in here. What I'm saying is I just want you to know that it is not going to be exactly what they were doing back in, like, I don't know, ancient Greece or wherever people picture classical education is coming from. And so I don't want you to hook onto it and go into it because you feel like, oh, this is what they used to do back in the day, so this must be the best way to learn. Okay, just go with what people are explaining about classical now, and then see if that is what floats your boat, if you feel like that's what fits your family, what makes the most sense to you. Okay, so when you look it up now, what you're going to find they're talking about something called the trivium, which is not as confusing as it sounds. They're just saying that children have 3 fairly distinct learning stages, okay, according to their age. All right. So big belief. Okay, that's what I just said. Sorry. So this type of education should be tailored to meet the needs of and take the advantage of the strengths of those stages. All right, so the first stage is the grammar stage, and this is about age 6 to 11. So this type of education wouldn't be pushing any like real hardcore serious learning in a very structured way before age 6. And in my opinion, nobody should, but that's just my opinion. All right. So at this age 6 to 11, we're talking about the grammar stage. They're great at absorbing information. Curricula in this method for the stage will focus heavily on memory work because they're good at memorizing. And they'll have children memorize details and facts about like every subject, often with little or no context, though. This is just the facts. This is just getting in memorization. Now, methods of memorization can be fun. You can use songs, physical activities, copy work, are all different ways that parents and teachers can help these kids memorize things, okay? Then they're gonna move into the dialectic stage, which is about ages 12 to 13. So this is like your middle school age. In this stage, children move into the need to know why and how about everything. And they start questioning everything, and therefore they need more discussion, need a foundation in logic and debate. So you will also see, besides the stages of learning in classical education, you will see a lot of repetition about certain subjects, and logic and debate are usually going to be found in there if somebody's talking about classical education. All right, but it could be a classical type of model even if you didn't use those particular subjects. All right, rhetoric. Now the rhetoric stage is the last stage. It's about, I don't think I named the middle stage, did I? Dialectic, about ages 12 to 13, or sometimes that's just called the logic stage, because that's when they're like, I need to know why, I need to know how, and then you need to get into kind of giving them the whys and the hows of things. All right, the third stage is about ages 14 to 18. That is called the rhetoric stage. And this is when the students are ready to learn how to analyze the information that they've been taking in, right? So you've given them a lot of facts and just straight information, and then you've tried to kind of start breaking down the why and the how of all these things. And now they're taking it in and they're analyzing it with everything else that they've learned. They're putting it together and they're converting it into explaining and persuading from them back to us. So rhetoric just means, it's kind of like, we would call it speech in terms of a speech class, like giving speeches, like presenting. But rhetoric usually has a persuasive bent to it, right? So that's the point here, is that they can take this information in now, and then they can explain it back to you in a way that is trying to sway your decisions or opinions about something, because that is kind of like a big part of life, right? The point of a lot of the stuff we say is to convince someone of something. And so that's what that's supposed to help them do. All right, and so this is where they learn to express their own thoughts and conclusions when they're in that rhetoric stage. Okay, the classical method frequently groups children of different ages together by stage. So obviously that's how you're going to do it. If you have the grammar stage, you're going to put all those kids together. If you have the logic or the dialectic stage, you're going to put those kids together, and then you're going to put the rhetoric stage kids together. Okay, so you can kind of group them together, but with this method, it would be a little bit harder to group larger age gap kids together. All right, so you'd have the grammar stage. Oh, I just said that, sorry. Okay, unit studies. That is our fourth type of education method. All right, so this method is also very unlike traditional schooling. So instead of a different book or a class for each subject, a student would study one topic through as many subjects as possible. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. If you were to study space, now our traditional framework would just put space in the science box, right? That's science. We're just doing science because we're studying space. But in a unit study framework or mindset, you would read books about space. So you're probably getting your science in there. You're going to study the history of space discovery and exploration. So then you're getting like some history / social studies, right? You might write a report or a story about space. So now you're doing writing, which is some language arts. You might make or draw a scale model of the planets. So now you've got art and maybe some math if you're doing scale modeling. You could learn about the comparative calculations related to the planet, sun, moon, and stars. And now that's definitely some math, right? You could learn how to pronounce and spell all the space-related objects. So that now you've got spelling, you might have some presentation or some rhetoric there, right? And then, so that includes a lot of subjects, right? And it was just one topic, space, but now we've included a lot of different academic subjects, right? Now with this one, you're almost always going to need some separate math. So if you get a pre-made unit study, you can make something up your own, or you can buy pre-made unit studies. They're usually going to include some math, but again, if you've got a range of children, not everyone will be able to do that math. For some people, it'll be way above their head. And for some people, it'll be like way below them. And it's not going to be like an incremental approach. So at some point, you have to have some incremental math instruction, whether that's with a set curriculum, or if you are just a math brainiac and you just want to look up, here's the main points in math they need to learn in second grade, here's the main points they need to learn in third grade. I mean, you can wing it if you'd like. Most of us just find it easier to just get a math book because we don't have that kind of time and creativity energy left. So with unit studies, you're still going to really need like a separate math book, but each student would, yes. Okay. So they'd also still need reading and phonics instruction, at least until they can read proficiently. And again, that's with most of these anyway. Some of them have some reading in there, but you need to know how to read at that point, like up to whatever the level is. So you still need like phonics instruction until you are reading proficiently. But other than that, you could do almost everything with all the ages at once, which saves a lot of time and it fosters great parent and sibling relationships. I do like to combine my kids for subjects whenever I can. All right. So the fifth big main homeschooling method is unschooling. All right. So some of you have probably heard of unschooling before. This is the hardest one to define because it's very nature defies labeling, right? I mean, what is unschooling? It's just not regular schooling. It could be almost anything else, right? So there's a broad range of ideas about how to educate that fall under this umbrella. So I've kind of dug in there to see like, well, what do you do with unschooling? What do you do with unschooling? And I've found a few different ways they go about it. So some people have literally no rules whatsoever, not even for eating and sleeping. No set times, the kid literally decides what they want to do, when they want to do it, all day, every day. I feel like that takes a certain type of parent to be able to do that. I don't think I'd be able to do that. So, but hey, maybe that's right up your alley. Maybe that's exactly the freedom that you want and you want your kids to have. All right. Some people will use just real math and phonics, right? Like you have to do with these other ones, because they don't want to have to wing all that. And they want to make sure their kid can read proficiently and that they're good at math and that they have all their math incremental steps to where they need to go. But then everything else is up for grabs, right? We've got to do some math, we've got to do phonics, and everything else is up to you. Some of them do just say something like, you got to spend 4 hours a day learning. It has to be educational. Some of them say no screen time until 3 or 5 or whatever, unless it is educational. So they must be going around and watching like what the kids have on these screens if they're looking things up and making sure that it's not like a video game or whatever. Again, I can't keep up with that. So I wouldn't be able to have that kind of setup. But maybe you can, especially if you only have 1 or 2 kids. I mean, that seems more doable. All right. But the kids basically decide when and what they want to learn. So this method is very child-led. But parents have a wide range of involvement in helping the child get the information they want, right? Some of them are a lot more hands-off and some of them are like right in there with the kid. Again, especially if you only have 1 or 2, you can kind of get in there a lot more, right? So this method can technically be used with several grades at once. But if each child is getting to choose what they want to learn about each day, that can get complicated if you're actually trying to be involved. Right? You can't be involved with 3 or 4 different kids at the same time learning 3 or 4 different things. It's just not possible. So, you got to work out all those details, and it depends on how many kids you have, and maybe only one of them needs to be unschooled because the other ones love textbooks and workbooks. You got to do what's best for your family and your kids. All right. So here's a couple newer methods that have like jumped onto the scene in recent years, but I thought they were worth mentioning. One of them that I am very fond of, although I haven't had time to really implement very well, is called the Brave Writer lifestyle. Okay, so this is a fairly new one. This lifestyle was developed by Julie Bogart, who is was a homeschooling mom of 5. Her kids have all graduated and gotten college degrees, so she did something right. She's the creator of Brave Writer, which is a homeschooling writing and language arts program. As the name denotes, it's more of a lifestyle than an educational method. but it can really be the backbone of an entire homeschool plan. Okay. It focuses on creating a language-rich and critical thinking environment. Her curriculum, if you choose to use, you can do this lifestyle without her curriculum, but her curriculum was also designed to foster the parent-child relationship while learning. And I think the whole lifestyle really is in general. So here's some of its core tenets, right? Poetry tea time. It's a big one. People in the Brave Writer lifestyle are in love with poetry tea time, which basically means they just read poetry and they drink tea. And if you don't like tea, that's totally fine. You can have coffee in there. You can have hot chocolate in there. I would like a cold Pepsi personally. You can drink whatever you want, lemonade, whatever. It's really just about reading poetry, but people think that kids like to have fancy teacups. So there you go. You can use fancy teacups or not. Reading aloud, big juicy conversations. That's kind of where the critical thinking can come in, right? Free writing, and she means really free writing, like no boundaries. They don't even have to let you see it. It's literally just to learn to just put your thoughts on the page. Literary elements, nature journaling, writing projects, art appreciation, movies and television. Go Julie. Copywork, dictation, Shakespeare, one-on-one time, jot it down, it's for little kids, language games, and sharing your writing. And those are just like the main sort of core things that they want you to kind of get in on a regular basis to form a Brave Writer lifestyle. What was I going to say about that? I don't remember now. But anyway, you can look up the Brave Writer lifestyle and like click on each one of these things, and there'll be things that give you more information about it. You will notice a lot of overlap with Charlotte Mason techniques, right? There's a lot of similar things in there. She's got narration and copywork and dictation here, things like that. Julie is a big fan of Charlotte, so that makes sense, right? Just like an updated version, a modern version of it. So, but what I mostly think of when I think of Brave Writer lifestyle is low stress, fun, low stakes learning. Okay, so she is big on helping you, especially with writing, which is a very vulnerable subject, and it can feel and it can feel very high stakes to the child. She helps you to lower those stakes, to not feel like you have to correct and criticize, even if it's constructive criticism, right? Everything in the writing, and just learn to praise what's good about it and help them to just get better and better. Because really the editing part, the stuff that we're mostly worried about is their periods and their commas and their capitals and whatever. Any professional writer, I mean, you want them to be able to write coherent sentences that you can read, right? But any professional writer gets edited a bunch, and there's literally a professional editor. So that stuff that we feel like is so important, and we're like, oh, it's all spelled wrong, and then they're all stressed out about their writing. That's all stuff that can be easily fixed later. And helping them learn how to form coherent sentences and get important thoughts down on paper and communicated to other people is like way, way, way more important. Julie's really good at trying to help people understand that and help their kids learn to write like that. I really like Julie. All right, so she uses phrases like enchanted education. Doesn't that sound beautiful? And sprinkle pixie dust on your learning, and everything is better with brownies. I mean, come on, that's just truth. That's just plain truth. Everything is better with brownies. All right, so you can see why Julie's my girl, right? You can find Julie and Brave Writer all over Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to get to know more about her, I highly recommend you do get to know more about her. Anybody who's homeschooling should know Julie Bogart. And I highly recommend her book, The Brave Learner. And that has even been recommended for people who have their kid in traditional school. Okay. All right. The last one I want to talk about is called title schooling. Now, most people have not heard of this. It's fairly new, but this phrase was coined by Melissa Wiley. She's a homeschooling mother of 6 and a children's book author. So like I said, most people haven't probably heard of it, but I bet the description is going to sound pretty familiar to a lot of homeschooling families. All right. So the term comes from a schooling style that follows the rhythms of the year in and out, up and down, like a tide, right? It looks something like this. Fall. We're going to be Charlotte Mason homeschoolers. We're going to do nature study. We're going to take lots of walks. And we're going to do tons of read alouds. And then we're going to do handicrafts while I'm reading aloud. And then we're going to get our things from our nature walks and we're going to examine them under microscopes and magnifying glasses. And we're going to do all kinds of narration, and the whole world seems full of educational possibilities. And it does. And it works for a while. And then winter. And then we're like, here's a workbook. Fill out some pages. That's all I can handle today. That's how winter goes for at least part of it. And then spring. And we're like, oh my gosh, we've been in this house so long, and we got to get out, and we got to do something. And you know what? We're unschoolers now. And then that's what we do. And then we take a summer break, and then we just repeat. And that is title schooling. And there's a lot of homeschooling moms right now going, oh, that's what I've been doing. I didn't know there was a name for it. So congratulations, Melissa Wiley. That's a very good name for it. Okay, so the point here is that you can jump in and out of any method at any time for any reason. Okay, you run your homeschool. Nobody else runs your homeschool. And you don't have to justify it to anybody else or explain it to anybody else. Just like you can change a curriculum if it's not working for you or your child, you can change the whole method. And you can use certain methods for just certain subjects and then have a completely different method for other subjects. That's totally fine. All right, so we all get into very busy or trying seasons every so often, and we have to lay aside our lofty plans and adapt. That is a fact of life, but it is also for sure a fact of homeschooling. And there you have it. Those are the main methods. There are a myriad of other styles under these methods, like sub methods, or in between, and a mix of them, kind of like title schooling is a mix of them, right? But these are the most popular homeschooling methods right now. So I just wanted to give you the gist of those. So now, trying to see how many minutes I have left. I'm going to give you just a little tidbit on those different types of subjects I was talking about. So you have your skill subjects and your content subjects, okay? So that it might sound complicated. This is not something you really need to take notes on. All you have to do is think through it when you're thinking about a particular subject. So if you look at a subject like math, right? That is a skill. That is a skill that has to be learned step by step, right? And maybe something like grammar, maybe, it's got to be like, you're going to learn your punctuation and stuff. And then eventually you get up to like diagramming and parts of speech and all that. Phonics, for sure. It's a skill subject, right? You've got to learn your increments. You've got to learn what sounds the letters make before you're putting them together and you're doing blends and things like that, right? So those are skill subjects. Those are the ones that are going to be harder to teach in a group of a broad range of kids. I mean, if you have twins, obviously you can probably teach them together, and maybe sometimes when they're 1 year apart or whatever, if they would be about the same year in school, a lot of times you can group them together. But a broad range, if you've got a first grader and a sixth grader, you probably can't do your like reading phonics instruction together. You're not going to be able to do your math instruction together, right? But content subjects, okay, so a lot of subjects fall into this category where we're just trying to get general information in, right? History, science, Bible. Now, writing is flexible. A lot of the language arts categories are flexible. Spelling, like if you're going to do a unit study thing and you're just learning lists of words and it's really just memorization, you've got a bigger range of kids you can put that in. But if you want spelling to be much more incremental and like learning exactly why this is spelled this way, you're going to be starting with smaller or lower level information for that, and you're going to work your way up, and it's going to be more incremental. So then each child would need their own spelling level. But if you want to just make it lists, and you've got a broader range of kids you can work with there, maybe you're not going to do like big long 4-syllable words with a first grader, but you might have like 3rd to 6th graders. You could probably squeeze those guys together and have spelling just coming out of something else you're doing, a unit study or a book you're reading or something like that, and make your own list. Writing, like I said, you can group those together, and Julie Bogart is helpful with that kind of thing. You can have a writing project. This is what we're going to write about, and you have this huge range of ages of your kids, but this the little guy, you're going to write it down for him. He's going to tell you what to say and you're going to write it down. That's the jot it down that Julie has. And the other kids are going to write it at their level, right? So what your second grader writes isn't going to look like what your sixth grader writes, and that it's not supposed to. It's almost like a written narration type of thing. And we are going to have one of our speakers talk about the one room schoolhouse, not method, but the one atmosphere and how to do that. So I don't want to get too far into that, but I just want you to understand the difference between skill subjects and content subjects and how you can group more children together with content subjects, because I have found that very helpful. Now, again, if you're doing traditional and every single kid has their own textbook and workbook for every subject, then that's not going to work as well. Unless, again, like I said, if you have kids in a very close age, I had that. I had kids that were like 15 months apart, and I just stuck them in the same grade. Even when I was doing the textbook workbook, I stuck them in the same grade for several things. So they did their science together, they did their history together, they did their Bible together. It was just much easier for me because it doesn't matter for those. They had their separate math and whatever. All right, so that is skill subjects versus content subjects. If hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, now a couple roadblocks. I want to help move these roadblocks out of your way if you feel like you're in this situation, right? Okay, so if you're saying to yourself, I don't know if I can do this because I don't want to be completely responsible for their education. Like, I don't want it all to be on me, right? I don't want to have to take the whole responsibility for my child's education. Well, the bad news is you are responsible for your child's education. I didn't like hearing that either. So I'm gonna give you a minute to absorb that, but you are. If you choose to delegate some or most, I'm never going to say all, because you're still going to be educating your kid a little bit at some point. You're certainly going to do a whole lot of it before they go to kindergarten, right? But you're still going to be educating your kids some. So, but if you choose to delegate some or most of it to a school or a tutor or whatever, that's fine. I mean, that's a valid decision, but you just need to recognize that you are in the end responsible for their education. It's not so simple as I'm going to send him off to public school or whatever, and then I don't have to think about it. He'll just come out okay in the end, because we know lots of stories of how kids did not come out okay in the end and they were falling through the cracks, right? You've got to be up on it. All right. But the good news is that no one on the face of the earth loves your child more or knows your child better than you, except maybe the other parent, maybe, right? So yes, you're responsible for it. But no one else can necessarily do a better job, because you know your child more than anybody, and no one will be willing to put as much effort and time and energy and tears and blood and sweat into your child's education than you, because no one loves them as much as you. All right. So responsibility is not a roadblock. You have it anyway, right? All right. Now, if you're saying to yourself, and Nicole mentioned this a little bit, I can't replicate school in my home. Great. Nobody wants you to. Only maybe some public school teachers might want you to. None of us want you to. Please don't try to replicate school in your home. That is not the point of homeschooling at all. The point of homeschooling is to try to do as much of the opposite of that as possible. Okay, so don't do that. So replicatability, which isn't the best word, but I was trying to get the words to match each other here, is also not an issue. Don't worry about that. Okay. Now, if you're saying, I won't be able to get it all in and I'll forget something important. Okay. I got good news and bad news here too. The answer to that is yes, you are going to forget something important. You will not be able to get it all in. That is the truth. The good news is, so does every educational plan, philosophy, institution. Every person's individual education left them with gaps. That is also a fact. So whatever, you're going to leave gaps. They're going to go to school and get gaps. Either way, there's going to be gaps. When I had my sixth child was 2, and he was super into space. And so I was gathering all these resources, and we had this little Blues Clues, little boombox thing that would play some Blues Clues songs. And I noticed it had a space song. So I'm playing the space song and I'm learning the space song to help my 2-year-old learn it. And I realized, it wasn't even the first time I heard it. It was weeks after hearing it. I was like, wait a minute. It started with "The sun's a hot star." And I'm like, the sun is a star? What? I was in honors classes, guys. Okay. I was no dummy. I don't think anyone ever told me the sun was a star. I thought it was a separate thing. There was like Earth, planets, moon, stars, and a sun. I did not know that the sun was a star. That's a gap, right? I was left with a gap. There's more. I could tell you more stories, but I was fine. I got along fine until I found out from the Blues Clues song that the sun was a star. I was okay. Your kid's gonna be okay too. So that one is fallibility. And I'm here to tell you, you are fallible. And so is every teacher you would put your child under and every curriculum ever written. I have found a mistake in every curriculum I've ever used. Somewhere there's a mistake in an answer to a question or on a test. And I'm like, no, I know that's true. I can look it up right in the book and it tells me right here, this is the answer, but the test is saying that it's some other answer, or just somewhere in the book. It's fine. They all make mistakes. Even all the editors that they put it through make mistakes at some point. It's fine. The last one is, I'm not consistent enough. There's no homeschooling mom alive that didn't say that at some point. And here's what I'm here to tell you. I'm going to tip over a sacred cow right here. So hold on to your hat. You are not called to be consistent. God does not, he's not calling any of us to be consistent. First of all, consistency is like, how do you even define that, right? You couldn't define it as perfect consistency unless it was perfection, and nobody is. There is no human alive that is completely consistent. It's not a thing. Jesus was it, right? None of us are going to be completely consistent. You are called to be faithful, and that's different. Faithfulness and consistency are different. Because with consistency, when I take that on and I'm trying to take on that identity, the second I mess up, the second I don't do the thing I said I was going to do every single day or every single hour or once a week or whatever it is, I've failed. I've totally failed, and there's no point because I can't be consistent, because nobody's ever going to be 100% consistent, right? But faithfulness means, oh, I was supposed to do that and I didn't. So the faithful response is to just do it now, or just jump back in the next day or the next week or whatever it is when it comes up again, and not just let it go and just neglect it and say, well, I messed up, so I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not faithful. But faithfulness doesn't mean perfection. It just means, oh, I got to do this again. It's the same thing you are called to do to keep your children alive, right? No one is forcing you to be 100% consistent that we're going to eat lunch every single day at noon, or I'm a failure and I'm a terrible mother. Because let me just tell you, I would be the worst mother on the planet if that's what I had to do, right? But you need to be faithful to feed your children every day, right? You need to be faithful to get up and keep them alive every day. You don't have to be 100% consistent in anything, and nobody ever is. So I don't know why we've made that some kind of standard for ourselves. All right, responsibility, you have it anyway. Replicatability, which again is not the best word. Just try to get them to rhyme, I guess. Don't worry about it. You don't need to do it. Fallibility, you're totally fallible, and so is every teacher you're ever going to hire to teach your children something. And consistency, no, throw it out. You need to be faithful. You don't need to be consistent. So if you think that you can just be faithful, I think you can, then you can do it. All right, I have a few more minutes, I think. All right, okay. All right, so here's your task. I'm going to give you some homework. Okay, I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to think about and articulate the reasons why you homeschool or you want to homeschool, and write them down somewhere. And then it's okay if you write it down and then you think about it some more and you scratch it out and you tweak it and you write, maybe there's 10 reasons, maybe there's 2 reasons. Maybe the list grows after a while. That's fine. Like I said, the reason I started wasn't necessarily the reason I stuck with it. It just kind of grew on me and I really liked it. And my reasons are very different than Shane's reasons and Nicole's reasons and everybody's reasons. So that brings me to my second point about writing your reasons down, is that any reason is acceptable. And I want to make sure you hear that. Any reason. Your reason for wanting to homeschool is your business, and you don't have to justify it to anybody. It doesn't have to be because you live in a bad school district. I don't think I live in a bad school district. I mean, I don't really pay attention, but I don't care. I don't care if it's the best school in the state on the corner. I want my kids to be home with me. I want to be around them, even though I kind of want to strangle them a lot of the time, right? A little oxymoron there. But it's your business. Any reason is acceptable. If your child has special needs, great. Health issues, you or your child has health issues and it's too hard to keep up with a regular school, schedule and the driving back and forth and whatever, that's your business. If you just want more time for relationships, if you're trying to avoid bad influence, let me just tell you, a lot of my reasons have to do with what I'm trying to get them not to learn than what I am trying to get them to learn. I had a lot of experiences in school that I don't appreciate having still in my brain, right? So I'd rather just not have that. And I'd rather have my kids not have those experiences. If you just hate a regular school schedule, that's legitimate. I just want to tell you, you have my permission to hate a regular school schedule and you don't have to do it. You don't have to participate in it and you don't have to do it in your house. If you want time to travel, one of our speakers is going to talk about that. If you want to have a family band or a circus act, that's your business. If that's why you want to homeschool, great. You don't have to justify it to anybody. It can be whatever you want. Okay. But it helps to write it down. It helps to get it, articulated. And here's why. I did a little alliteration again. I'm kind of proud of myself. Okay. So it's gonna help you when you're trying to choose your curriculum. Sometimes the why of why you're homeschooling is going to make a difference. So Shane and some other people that I know, they're going to put excellence probably in their kind of core values about why they want to homeschool, right? And I'm over here like, I wouldn't even touch the curriculum from Institute, what is it called? Institute for Excellence in Writing, because it had the word excellence in it. And I was like, no, that's not me. Like Nicole said, I like to keep my standards low so I can survive and feel like I'm doing it. And I help other people understand that they can do it too. Because if I can do it over here, a complete hot mess, then other people can do it too. So, but maybe excellence is it. So you're going to pick a different curriculum than me, right? For some things, if that's your goal is academic excellence, and that's why you want to educate, because maybe you thought that putting them in the school near you or whatever wasn't going to give them academic excellence. I'm over here like, we want to just calm down and dial it back. I'm going to choose a different kind of curriculum, right? So it's going to help you with your curriculum. It's going to help you with co-ops. Do you want to be in a co-op? Do you not want to be in a co-op? Do you want to be in this co-op or that co-op? So why you're homeschooling is going to influence that and help you make your decisions in that area, right? Curriculum, co-ops, it's going to help you to continue, okay? When the going gets rough, when you want to quit, when everyone around you tells you that all the problems you're talking about will be solved if you just put your kid in school. Let me just tell you, it's going to be the number one answer to any problem you ever have for the rest of your child's educational years. If you are homeschooling and you complain about something, they're going to say, just put them in school. And sometimes it's going to be so tempting. It's going to sound really good, especially if a lot of the issues you're having are educational issues. You're going to be like, yes, that does make sense. Okay, but if you've got your reasons written down and you can go back to them and look at them again, you'll be able to evaluate, is putting this child in school really going to help? Is it going to meet these reasons, or do I just need to push through this and it's a hard time, but these aren't really my reasons and these are still really important to me? Or maybe they changed and you reevaluate, right? So curriculum, co-ops, continue, and crew. It's going to help you find your crew, right? And I do have some people, like I said, some good friends like Nicole, one of my best buddies, who really strives for academic excellence. And I'm like totally on a different page for that, but we are on the same page for other reasons, right? The godly influence that we want to have over our children and the relationships that we want to have with our children, and the biblical worldview basis that we want to give them. So it's going to help you find your crew, because it can be disheartening if you get into relationships with other homeschool moms and they've got very, very different reasons for homeschooling. And then you're trying to like articulate a problem or maybe vent to them or whatever. And they're like, oh, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? So you do want to get a crew together, and it can be slow growing to gather this crew of people who are on the same page with you about your most important reasons or whatever. Okay. I only have 4 minutes, so I don't think I'm going to get to my bonus thing if Nicole needs to pop in and ask me some questions. But thank you.
I do want you to finish up. I need to start the next person in 4 minutes, so I don't think you should take that full 4 minutes. But I do. Do you want to just shoot your bonus out in a minute or so?
Okay, I can try to just give you a gist really quick. So something that I started maybe 5 or 6 years ago, so I had already been homeschooling for a long time, that got onto my radar, and I wanted to try it. And it is my favorite thing about homeschooling. It's called morning time. And it doesn't like fit into any particular category, so I didn't know where to put it, and I didn't know if anybody else would mention it. But you can look it up. Sometimes people call it circle time. Sarah Mackenzie from Read Aloud Revival, they called it symposium at some point because it wasn't happening in the morning, which is why some people call it circle time too. But what it is just a time when you gather with all of your children and you do a few things, whatever that is. So Pam Barnhill has a lot about morning time, and she suggests you want to have kind of 4 basic parts: reading, ritual, recitation, and relationship, right? So you might do some read aloud. Ritual would mean like a prayer. Some people, they light a candle, especially if they're doing this the first thing in the morning, their first entry into the school day. They might have a candle lit. Maybe like we would try to sing a hymn, and we would try to sing a patriotic song. Like I would just have one picked for like the term, the 6-week term or something. So they were like learning a patriotic song and a hymn. And recitation. So we would put some memory work in there if you wanted to learn verses or historical facts or whatever. And then relationships. So something that is good for your relationship might still be the same read aloud. It might be something else. But you don't have to do any of those things necessarily. It's kind of like just a time where you can stick in anything that you don't know where else to put. Like we want to read some poetry, we want to read some Shakespeare, but I don't know where to put it. I don't know how to fit it in. Or anything that seems to be slipping through the cracks after a while. You're like, I'm never getting to that thing. I'm just going to stick it in morning time. And so everybody comes together. I like it as a way to start the day. I'm completely not even close to consistent at it. So just let's be clear there. And still I've seen fruit even when we don't do it very consistently at all. So I still think it's a pro. And so it's really whatever you want to throw in there that you can do with all your kids at once. To sustain and be faithful with it, though, I recommend you find something that lights your fire, something that you really want to get to. Maybe you are like super into Shakespeare or poetry or music or some kind of art or craft or something, and you want to put that in there, and then it will motivate you to do it. And then also, if you can find something your kids would look forward to and put that in there, then they're motivated and you're all not just dreading it or trying not to do it. And you want to keep it simple. And at the beginning, I would recommend you keep it short. It can be like 10, 15 minutes. I usually would throw like history in there since I needed to do that with everybody anyway. And it would be like an hour, hour and a half or whatever. So it's up to you, but I really like it. You can look up morning time. There's tons of podcasts on it. You can find all kinds of blog articles on it and then see if that's something that you might want to put in. Okay, now
that is awesome. I really like Pam Barnhill. We've been doing morning time. I called it circle time when I started it, and I thought I was being all unique and new. And then I started realizing that so many people do this. Even in the traditional schools, my kids had circle time in the mornings where you would come in and you would have a routine that would help you kind of shift your mindset toward the school day. So no, I love that. That was definitely a bonus. So before we move on, our next presenter has ceded some of her time. So I do want to just point out a couple of things. When you talk about, so we've got some questions, and because we don't have a lot of time to do question and answer during the day, we will be answering some of these questions during the Q&A today at 2 o'clock. One of the questions is about matching your curriculum or finding a curriculum that matches these styles. So like what curriculum uses Charlotte Mason, or what curriculum uses, a classical model or whatever. And I think the short answer, well, you go ahead and see, can you answer that? Do you think?
Well, I was going to say, like we would need another hour. So I'm thinking though, if that is something that, I mean, you can look it up. You can just say like classical homeschooling curriculum and kind of just do that. And just look, it'll take you a while. But I think that those of us that are presenting, if we want to put our heads together and kind of throw it all towards one of us in an email and then send it to the attendees with
That's
just some categories with the curriculum that we know of, that we know we've used or liked, or other people that we know have used and liked, we can do that. And that's probably the most helpful
For sure. For sure. I think that's a great idea. We can do that. The other part of that is I want to say these these styles of curriculum, these teaching styles, and also even within the styles, when we talk about the trivium and the stages of the kids, they are very fluid. They're not rigid at all. So when we say 6 to 11, it is okay if you see some dialectic tendencies in your 7 year old, or if you see, some rhetoric tendencies in your 10-year-old. They're really fluid, and you will also see some grammar stages in your adult college children. So that is just really important to remember. And I think that's true when we think about these curricula, right? We You can pretty much use, there are lots of curriculum that you can use as a guide to do Charlotte Mason or to do unit studies or to do, so the curriculum isn't really the point so much as it is the style, and then you can kind of choose some curricula that lean toward that style. But you could take a math book and turn it into a Charlotte Mason discovery thing. We're going to talk about fractions today. Okay, now let's go outside and half a leaf, and what if I put this in 4 equal parts? So the styles that we're talking about are really about what's attractive to your family, right? And some kids may be attracted to more than another. I know that I have a different teaching style than my kids' learning styles, which has been a challenge for me to figure out. And so this breakdown was really helpful for me when I first heard it. So I am going to assume that this is you. This is the quote from you for the day. And I'm going to put your name under it. Are you ready?
Sure.
I want to be around my kids, even though I kind of want to strangle them sometimes too.
I believe it was most of the time. I want to
okay. I'm going to put that most of the time. So that is her. That's what we're going to put under hers. That's her quote for the day. And if you guys have any more questions, in particular, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat. Doesn't matter. I'm not sure why we have two different ones, but I like having the questions particularly over here. So, Courtney, do you want to leave us with any contact information or any way we can get in touch with you if we need to find? I know they can get in touch with you through me. Do you care if we share your email, that kind of thing?
No, you can share my email. I'm like on Facebook and Instagram, but I literally never post anything. So
okay, so just search for her and you can direct message her, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Courtney Endicott, and you can definitely direct message her, and I don't know if she'll get back to you the same day.
Yeah, maybe.
But she will get back to you. And I'll make sure I put all their contact information in the final email that we send out.
Yes, okay? For sure. And we'll try to get a list of some curriculum to kind of get you started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to change your status here.